Hey, gang, and welcome to the debut episode of Open the Gates, the films of Lucio Fulci. Um, I know it's not October yet, but I thought I would just kick off this Monday. It's the very last day of September. I don't think anybody will begrudge me starting out Fulci Fall a little early with a new segment, like I said, called Open the Gates. And I'm going to be talking about more than likely, a couple of Lucio Fulci films each Monday for the entire month of October. And I'm going to mix it up a little bit. As you can see, I did not start at the beginning of Fulci's filmography. I'm starting somewhere in the first quarter. And I'm going to be talking about Zombie and the Gates of Hell, also known as City of the Living Dead. The first time I saw it was under the Gates of Hell title. I heard about it from my parents, my dad in particular. They watched a lot of movies at the drive-in, a ton of them. And I believe at one time the Gates of Hell was on heavy rotation at the drive-ins. This is, as Joe Bob would say, a drive-in kind of movie or a grindhouse type of movie. And it really inspired my love of all things Fulci. I had to watch everything with Fulci's name attached that I could get a hold of. And I watched The Beyond, which I'm eventually going to talk about on one of these, under the Seven Doors of Death title, which unfortunately was cut, but I didn't know any better. And I did not know that Louis Fuller was Lucio Fulci, but Louis Fuller was a pseudonym of Lucio Fulci. And so I wouldn't recommend watching Seven Doors of Death. I would definitely recommend watching The Beyond, which has Fulci's name on it, not Louis Fuller. And I'm going to be talking about House by the Cemetery. I'm going to be talking about all kinds of Fulci films, horror and non-horror. There's actually a very good Western that he did that Steve and I have seen called I think it's Four of the Apocalypse or Four for the Apocalypse. I think it's Four of the Apocalypse. Um, sorry, my throat has been a little bit scratchy. So we've got all kinds of Fulci programming lined up. We're going to have Forgotten Fulci, where I talk about lesser known Fulci films. We're going to be talking about Fantasy Fulci. And what Fantasy Fulci is going to be is movies that we wished that Fulci had directed. Okay. I'm going to share some of mine. Hopefully, you guys will get to share some of yours as well, either through the chat or if you want to come in live on the stream with me. We got a couple of watch alongs coming up this weekend. I do not have the promotion out for them yet, but we will be doing The Gates of Hell, aka City of the Living Dead, and House by the Cemetery. Gates of Hell will be Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. House by the Cemetery will be Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm going to try my best to do these, folks. This will be the first weekend in October. I want to kick off Fulci Fall right. I must be boring my audience because I just lost the only two people I had. Well, I gained one back there. Maybe my dear husband will actually show up here at some point if he's not too busy at work. So anyway, just wanted to let you know what I've got upcoming this week. And for the entire month of October, we will have this series of programming. And we'll probably have a couple more watch-alongs, maybe more than that. I'll just have to see exactly how many weekends, because usually I alternate weekends on the watch-alongs now. But I guess we'll go ahead and get started. And of course, I'm going to rate these movies as I always do, doing the Deadites rating scale. Um, and I'll tell you a little bit about each one of the films. But if you're a Fulciite, as I am, a huge fan of Fulci, you may not need this description, but you may be uh, interested in what else I've got to say about these. Now, Steve told me, he said, you know, everybody's talked about, Fulci films ad nauseum, but hopefully I can add a little twist on these that will get people interested in them if they haven't seen them, or if they haven't seen them in a while, maybe get them interested in watching, pulling back off their shelf and watching. So the first one, of course, is Zombie, with that very vicious tagline, "We are going to eat you," and the very popular zombie from this film. You can see right there. Um, I guess you would call him maybe the hero zombie, or whatever. He's the most prominently displayed zombie in the film. And this is the only film I know of. If anybody knows any other film where a zombie wrestles underwater with a shark, I'd like to know what that movie is, because Zombie is the only movie that I know, horror or otherwise, where a zombie has battled a shark underwater. So, anyway, so we start out this movie, um, which in Italy it was considered the unofficial sequel to Dawn of the Dead. I don't quite get that, but it is a cool ass zombie film in any event. Um, and in England, it was known under the title of Zombie Flesh Eaters. And they banned it in England as obscene. In America, it was called Zombie, and that's where it got the depraved tagline, as they say, "We're going to eat you." Um, Tisa Farrow stars in this, and Ian McCullough, who I met in the last couple of years or so at a convention. And he was super, super nice. Took a picture with me, signed a mini poster I got of Zombie, um, and all of that for $50. I mean, I got a picture taken with him, and I got the big mini poster. Basically, I paid for the mini poster, and then he signed it and took a picture with me. So, anyways, so we got Tisa Farrow, we got Ian McCullough, and the great Richard Johnson, the late great Richard Johnson from The Haunting. And this is a splatter classic. I don't care what way you slice it, it is indeed a splatter classic. So we start out with what appears to be a body wrapped up, and you see Richard Johnson's character looking like a doctor or a scientist, and he shoots the body in the head. Some of us that have watched a lot of George Romero films where you got to shoot the zombies in the head may guess, what exactly is going on there. And if you didn't know by the title that there were going to be zombies in this. And, some blood and stuff comes out, and he says, the boat can leave now. So that's kind of like the opening line to this. We don't know where this boat is going, where he's sending it, where Richard Johnson's character is at that point in time. We later find out he's on an island called Matul. And so the boat ends up floating until it ends up in the New York harbor. some cops go aboard it and get attacked by some zombies. And it just kind of goes on from there. Tisa Farrow hooks up with Ian McCullough, who's a reporter, and her father is missing. We later find out the body that was shot in the head, that was trying to come back to life as a zombie, was Tisa Farrow's father. So her and Ian McCullough traveled to Matul to find out what happened to her father, and she knows Richard Johnson's character, and starts asking, and they find out that the island of Matul is being overrun by zombies, basically. So not only do you have the zombie fighting the shark, but you have a woman getting her throat ripped out by this guy. Lots of ooey gooey zombie goodness or messes, whatever way you want to look at it. And an ice curing scene where a wood splinter, slowly goes into this woman's eye, punctures and goes into her eye and her brain. Very, very slowly, I might add. But something else I'd like to say about this that really has nothing to do with the story in Zombie. It's a gore classic, gore splatter classic. If you're into that kind of stuff, if you're into zombies, you're into gore, you're into splatter, all that, then you're just absolutely going to love this. But something I noticed when this baby came out on Blu-ray from Blue Underground, it was the most, for a late 70s movie, it was the most fantastic looking Blu-ray I've ever seen. I mean, it blew my mind. It was so great. And so then when it came out on 4K, I said, well, Steve said, I don't think that this thing is going to look any better than the Blu-ray. But it does. Believe it or not, it does. So, like I say, if you're into Lucio Fulci films, if you're into zombie films, if you're into gore films, and you want to see something that looks really good on a high-def TV, and you've got a 4K setup, this baby is one that I definitely recommend. I would say run, don't walk to pick up Zombie. And try it on for size. Now, as always, I tell you, don't go out and just plunk down your hard-earned money and say, I want a copy of Zombie. Don't do that. But if you can find a for free version to watch, right, do that first. If you've got a friend or a family member that you can borrow a copy from, do that. And then if you decide, hey, I really like this movie, this is something I envision myself watching several times, then you can think about plunking down your hard-earned money on that. In fact, I'll do you guys a solid. And I'm going to see if this is on... the usual suspects like YouTube or Tubi. Now, you can buy or rent it. I would suggest renting it to watch on YouTube. It is in full Zombie Flesh Eaters 1979 remastered. And it appears to be relatively the same cut as just Zombie. And then there's also Zombie 1979 remastered you can watch. So you can watch it on YouTube. So if you want to watch it for free, then you can definitely check it out on YouTube under various titles. So what rating am I going to give this? Um, I am going to give this, you probably can guess. I'm going to give this one 5 Deadites out of 5 because I think it's an incredibly gory, incredibly fun zombie film. I just have a lot of fun with it every time I watch it. Now, I didn't watch it again before doing the stream, but um, I have watched this thing too many times to count, really. This and Gates of Hell I have. Um, so I highly recommend it. If you've not seen it, pull it up on YouTube and give this thing a watch, folks. Because if you're at all interested in these types of films, I think you're going to love it. Okay, so um, moving on to um, The Gates of Hell, also known as City of the Living Dead, starring Christopher George, Catriona McCall. Um, so, basic storyline of this: there's 7 gates of hell, and they've been torn open. And then in 3 days, on All Saints Day, the dead are gonna rise and walk the earth. So, what starts all this? You may ask. Well, there's a priest, Father Thomas, who I don't know what Father Thomas's problem is, but he looks a little worse for wear, and we see him walking in a cemetery. And this is interspersed with Catriona McCall's character as a psychic, and she's with a group of people, and they're having a seance. And she sees the vision of Father Thomas walking in the cemetery, and Father Thomas hangs himself. Like I said, I don't know what's wrong with Father Thomas, but evidently he had no will to live. When Father Thomas hangs himself, that opens the gates of hell, and literally all hell breaks loose, right? So once the gates of hell are open, the dead start slowly coming back. On All Saints Day, all bets are off, and all the dead are going to come out of the graves, right? And these dead like to pull your brains out of the back of your head. They just, and pull it out. Now, here's the other thing about this movie: we have flying maggots coming through the window, getting all over people's faces, and these are real worms, people. And Catriona McCall has talked about this. She has talked about that scene. I mean, those nasty little critters were everywhere. And, it is said that Fulci liked torturing his actors and actresses, especially women, the actresses in the film. And he sometimes would be very cruel to them. Now, I have a lot of respect for Fulci as a filmmaker, God rest his soul. But the way he treated both his crew, they said who he was most hateful towards was his crew. And he would curse at them all the time, I guess in Italian, but, nevertheless, I'm sure his crew was Italian. Now, some people claim they never had trouble with him or they could shrug him off. Catriona McCall was one woman that could say, she'd say, "Oh, Lucio," and she wouldn't even pay any attention to him, But other actresses have said they had a hard time working for him. Giovanni Lombardo Radice, he was somebody that got along really well on films with Fulci. Now, the films that Leonardo Giovanni Lombardo Radice had trouble with were like the cannibal ones, like Diodato. I think it was Diodato that he absolutely could not stand. But So anyway, back to this film, which, speaking of Giovanni, Giovanni is in this um, under a different name, John Morgan, which I guess was a more American sounding name than, they didn't want to use Giovanni, I guess. Uh, but Giovanni was a very nice man. God rest his soul as well. We lost him a few years back. Giovanni, I interviewed when I was doing my Blood Type magazine. I did an Italian horror special, and he was one of the few Italian people that could speak a lot of English and could understand the questions that I sent to him, which were, of course, in English. But he was very sweet and nice and accommodating and all that. And I really miss that guy. I think he was a really cool guy. I always liked watching interviews and stuff with him. It's not like I knew him personally or anything, but he is great in this as Bob, who's I guess he's basically a homeless guy with some various mental issues, um, who gets his head drilled in the film. And who told me when I interviewed him that the actor who was supposed to be letting the drill go into his head was a little rough with Giovanni and did not understand what let's pretend means, which was the way Giovanni put it. So when you're watching that scene, think about poor Giovanni being like rough housed or roughly handled during that scene. So Hadriana McCall, it appears that she dies during the seance. And they start to bury her, and then due to union rules, the grave diggers so she ain't going nowhere. We'll finish burying her tomorrow. And so she wakes up in the casket, which is a nightmare to me anymore because I'm very, very claustrophobic. Hey, Russell, you like both the films? Well, great. I'm glad that I'm talking about some films that you enjoy. Hopefully, you'll like a lot of this other stuff that I'm going to be talking about upcoming for Fulci Fall. Um, so I lost my whole train of thought. That's not your fault, Russell. I just do it all the time. So something keeps nagging at Christopher George. He's a reporter. You said probably. Um, Christopher George plays a reporter who wants to find out more about what was going on with the people that Catriona McCall's character Mary was hanging out with. And so he just can't shake the thought that something's not quite right here. And so when Mary wakes up, realizes she's in the casket, she starts beating on the top of it, and there's glass in the top of it. It breaks. And that whole scene, like I said, is very hard for me to watch now due to my extreme claustrophobia. I didn't used to have claustrophobia, but now it's really, really bad. So whereas that scene didn't used to be so hard to watch, now, like if I watch it in a dark room, I'm like, oh, let's hurry up and get this over with. Um, Here's how bad I am. In Maxine, for those of you that have seen the movie Maxine, there's a movie or there's a part in the movie where she's getting a mold of her face done. And it's like showing it from the inside. Like her looking out, and that almost just suffocates me just watching that. I almost had to close my eyes in the movie theater so I didn't see it. Um, yes, I agree. The splinter in the eye scene was a great effect, Russell. It was a fantastic effect. Um, but so Mary, thankfully, Christopher George hears her screaming and beating on the top of the casket, and he gets her out of there and he saves her life. But then she tells him about this vision she had where the gates of hell have been open and they have to go to this small town and stop things before they get worse. But by the time they get there, things have already gotten pretty bad, because you have people turning into zombies all over the place and tearing people's brains out and coming back and killing their parents. And um, you have a girlfriend and boyfriend. And here's the other thing about this movie: when women primarily see Father Thomas, the vision of Father Thomas. And Father Thomas evidently was one evil SOB. I don't know if he was in real life or it was like after he died, after hanging himself, that he got like that. But he smiles, this really creepy smile. And it's like the woman can't look away and blood starts coming out of her eyes. And then I kid you not, this woman pukes up her entire intestinal tract and all associated organs. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. She does it. And then either she does or one of the other zombies rips her boyfriend's the back of his head off and pulls the brains out. So we've got a head drill scene that really has nothing to do with the zombies. It's just a little bonus extra added gore. We've got flying maggots flying in the window and getting all over people's face and making them vomit and all that good stuff. We got a chick vomiting up her entire intestinal tract. Yeah. This movie pretty much has it all as well. And this, like I said, was the first Lucio Fulci movie that I ever watched. And this is the one that I heard my parents talk about. This is the one my parents saw at the drive-in, and my dad went on and on about this guy getting his head drilled and maggots flying and all that. And I was like, I'm missing the greatest horror movie ever made. So whenever I was able to find this movie in a video store, and it was one of those big box VHS, and it was the most glorious thing I'd ever seen in my life. Under the Gates of Hell title. Rosa, you say, is this part of the City of Hell trilogy? I don't know if it would be the City of Hell trilogy, but I guess this and the Beyond, this and the Beyond, and maybe I don't know if House by the Cemetery would be considered that or not, but I know it almost seems like this one and the Beyond are connected. Um, but you may be right on that, Russell. I'm not going to say you're wrong. Um, so yeah, I was just elated when I found this, and in that same video store, I was able to find "I Spit on Your Grave," and that's how I watched "I Spit on Your Grave" for the first time. Because, as I've said before, and I'll continue to say it, that was the one and only film that my parents ever told me that maybe I should wait to watch it, and that was good on them on their part, because that was definitely a movie that I did not need to watch at the age I was then. I was way too young to be watching something like that. And I didn't understand. I just thought it was a horror film. And I could hear the sounds. And again, I thought, I'm missing the greatest horror movie ever made. But when I got older and I actually able to purchase a copy of it or rent a copy and watch it, I realized, oh, that's what this movie's about. And that's why my parents chose not to let me watch it then. Most everything else they would let me watch growing up. So this is just a masterpiece, and a masterpiece on all levels. It's very entertaining. It's very gory. It would be what I would consider a vomit bag classic, if if you think of such things. Um, and I did get to see it years and years later at a drive-in. Me and Steve went up to, I believe, the Skyline Drive-In in Indiana, and we saw it. And a friend of ours was there, and for whatever reason, the negative or the film print they used had the Bob head drill scene cut out, and the scene where they pull up in front of the funeral home or funeral parlor twice. And me and Steve's friend, like, he got out of his vehicle and, like, or yelled out the window over to us. He's like, "What the fuck happened to the Bob head drill scene?" I said, "I have no idea." That was so disappointing because I had been for years wanting to see the Bob head drill scene on the big screen like my parents got to at a drive-in. But alas, that was not to be. But I got to watch the rest of the film on the big screen. Um, yeah, unfortunately, Fulci had a sad life and a sad death as well. Tom, you are correct. Um, I think he was a very lonely and bitter man, and until the very end, his wife died, I think, kind of young. He had, uh, grievances against the Catholic Church. He was not fond of the Catholic Church, and um, like Giovanni told me, he'd had a lot of tragedies in his life, unfortunately. Um, but I guess, so at the expense of, I don't want to, like, just keep rambling. I'm also gonna have to give this one 5 deadites out of 5 because it's just absolutely fantastic. Very gory film, but also a fun film. Fulci did a lot of fun films. Now, in the later years, some of his films were a little uneven, and I'm going to get to some of those. But these two that I talked about tonight, Zombie and Gates of Hell, aka City of the Living Dead, um, is oh, I was right on the trilogy. Okay. City of the Living Dead, House by the Cemetery, and the Beyond. I thought that was right, Russell, but I didn't know for sure. Um, but I want to thank Russell for being in here, and I want to thank Tom for being in here also. I'm sorry, Tom, I'm just about ready to get off of here. But hopefully, those of you that didn't get to come in live on the stream, or maybe some of you were watching, you didn't feel like chatting, which is fine. That's perfectly fine. I actually meant to do this a little earlier, and probably next week I will do it at 8 o'clock. People are used to me doing these at 8 p.m. Eastern time, and it might have thrown a few people off me doing this at 9. Also, doing it at 9 is too close to some other people's streams that they do. Some people do them at 9 or 10 or 11 or so. So that's okay though. Not a big deal. Good night, Russell. Thanks for stopping by. Um, and be sure to tune in for all the upcoming Fulci programming I'm going to be having for Fulci Fall. Stay tuned this weekend for there's going to be a watch along for the Gates of Hell Saturday night starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. There's going to be one for House by the Cemetery Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So be sure to tune in for all of that coming up. And as for me, I'm off like a dirty shirt. This is not a dirty shirt, but I'm off like a dirty shirt. But before I go, I want to remind everybody, as I always do before I get off of here for the night, to be kind to one another and blaze that trail. Have a fantastic rest of your Monday, folks. Let's push through Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, get to Friday, and then hot dog, it'll be time for the weekend. Thank you for saying cool, Russell. So I'm out of here, folks, but I'll see everybody next time.